Alec, I'm recording.
Okay, cool.
All right, excellent. So we're going to go ahead and get this baby started. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm sure this is how you all want to spend your Friday is on the computer with us. So thank you. But hopefully it will be informative. We're going to walk through kind of the basics of the Creation Development Fund. I'm going to talk about the whole structure, but today we're really focused on the phase one creation. And the deadline for the Creation Fund will be May 20th, 2019. So if you're just joining us, I said earlier, it would be helpful if you have the guidelines in front of you. They were sent in the email, and you can also find them on the website under What We Do, National Subsidy Programs Creation Fund. Because we have a bunch of people on the call, we are going to keep everyone on mute just for the presentation portion of the call. And then at the end, we will be taking questions and we can open it up. So let's go ahead and get started. Alec, can you flip
to the next slide?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Let me get back in there. Oh, there it is, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to start here, just kind of going back to the basics. For those of you that have been around for a while, we have, you might know that we've been going through kind of a re-envisioning of NPN, looking at the partnership, looking at our mission, really kind of focusing our values. And so recently we've kind of revamped or touched up our mission. And so this is currently it. And I just want to review it quickly because I think it's important. So NPN contributes to a more just and equitable world by building power for artists, advancing racial and cultural equity in the arts presenting field, fostering relationship building and reciprocity between individuals, institutions, communities, and working towards systems change. It's important to highlight this because we're actually looking at all of our programs through this lens. And so we have kind of over the year tweaked the Creation Fund to really accomplish this mission. How we do accomplish this is through our programs, through our partners, and through the artists who we collaborate and support. So really, we're about focusing on collaboration, relationship building, and community engagement. And you'll hear this again and again. Some of the questions we hear or we ask in the Creation Fund is about those relationships. Because people are central to this work. Our funds support artists, support livelihoods, and so we really want to look at how we're supporting authentic relationships. So currently we have about 72 partners in the network. And really the network is pretty broad because it's not just our partners, but it's about the communities that they engage with and all of the thousands of artists that they nurture every year. Okay, next slide, Alec. So as I said, the upcoming deadline is going to be May 20th, and this is for projects premiering between January 1st, 2020 and December 31st, 2023. Now, some folks have asked me, why do we have this project period? Can a project apply if it's premiering or if it's being presented in October? The answer is no, and why we kind of stick to this project period is because the Creation Fund is focused on process, right? It's not additional money to offset moving the work around the country. It's not to offset presenting. It's really focused on the process of creation development. Therefore, we have this project period so that it allows for time for that to happen. The Creation and Development Fund, were created just recognizing that a lot of artists were on this kind of hamster wheel of creation, right? Creating and then touring, or creating and presenting the work, and then going back to the studio and creating again. And so this particular fund really is meant to kind of slow down that process, which is why we have the 3 years that the projects can be presented in. Again, if all of this information is online, and I should note that, the guidelines are a PDF document, but the actual application is online through Submittable. So there's a link in the guidelines if you have those, and that is where you can find the link to the actual application. If you want to look at a sample of the application, it's at the end of the guidelines that were distributed. Next slide. So the Creation and Development Fund. As I said, the Creation Development Fund really supports this 3-part process. It supports the creation, development, and mobility of new artistic work that advances racial and cultural justice and results in a live exchange. We're going to talk in a little bit about what a live exchange means and what that can look like. But for now, I just, again, want to mention that, these funds are focused on that process of creation and development, not necessarily that final product. Although we do realize, and we hope that every project does end in some sort of product, whether it's a performance, an installation, an activity, a community, residency. Really, we try to make this fund pretty flexible, recognizing all the different ways of creating work. The Creation Development Fund, the funds are directly to support the artists and the company. So for those partners and presenters that are on the call, I just want to note that your participation is really as a co-commissioner. The funds will go directly to the artists, and they're unrestricted funds for the creation of this work, new work. The structure of the fund, which we're going to go into in a little bit, allows partners to collaborate, to maybe take risks on an artist who might not have name recognition. It's a fund that a lot of artists really both start their careers out by receiving one of these funds, and also many artists come back to the fund over the year, and that's great. It's great to see artists who have been supported before, and it's great to have first-time artists. We're going to talk a little bit later about the leveraging power of this fund, but I just should note a lot of artists who started their careers with the Creation Development Fund are able to leverage other opportunities, other awards because of this support. Again, the fund is focused on relationship building, and when we get into the structure, you'll see why. And also, we hope that it builds capacity for co-commissioners. I would say probably about 85% of NPN partners have participated as co-commissioners. It's really, a great opportunity or a great way to kind of build that capacity. And even some of our smaller organizations present as have participated as co-commissioners. Okay, next slide, Alec.
Just a second. So there we are.
Okay, so multi-level support. As I said, this program is really has these 3 phases. So the first, which we're going to be talking about today, is the creation support. The second phase we call development phase. And so projects that receive creation fund support are also eligible for additional funds to develop the work. That work and those funds can either go directly to the artist or can be split between an artist and co-commissioner of their choosing. The development fund happens twice a year and can be accessed at any stage of that creation cycle. Recognizing that every project is very different on a different timeline, we have these ongoing funds twice a year that folks can access. And then phase 3 is mobility. So as I said, hopefully this, this work will result in a tour, a presentation, installations. And when we get into the structure, you'll see that it's purposefully structured so that the work and the artist, has a life beyond the creation. Those of you that are partners, you can access the Artist Engagement Fund to support this phase 3, the mobility of the work. Now, we don't have additional funds on top of what we allot you annually, but just for planning purposes, if you want to start thinking about it, you can use the Artist Engagement Fund to support the presentation of the Creation Fund work. Again, if you do have questions, I just ask that you write them down, and we will take questions at the end of the call. So quickly, the Creation Fund goals: advancing racial and cultural justice, holistic support for diverse artistic processes. I'm not going to read through all of these, but I do just ask that you kind of familiarize yourselves with these, because we do look for projects that align with these goals. Next slide. So who is involved? An artist, of course, artist or company, 2 or more organizations in different communities who we call co-commissioners. You've heard me say this earlier, and this is how we refer to presenters that are involved in this fund. So 2 or more commissioners. One has to be an NPN partner, the other doesn't. And I should say that there's a minimum of 2 commissioners. Many projects have many more. We've seen 5 to 7 commissioners, I think, in this last cycle. But again, the minimum is that you have 2 commissioners in different communities. And then NPN, of course. Next slide.
What's that? Oh, I'm sorry.
Next slide. That's okay. So what does a co-commissioner do? The co-commissioner is responsible for contributing a match that goes to the creation of the work, and then also to support the presentation of the work through a live public exchange. If you'll notice that there are 2 tiers for the matches, and this is because we're really looking at the different capacities of presenters. We want to recognize that, and we want to also, realize that. I'm sorry. Real quick. Okay, sorry. We want to just honor the different capacities. And so organizations that have a budget less than $1 million are contributing $2,000, and organizations who have a budget above $1 million are contributing $3,000, and that's each. So each commissioner comes up with this money. NPN matches $8,000, and then the commissioners also agree to present the work so that the work has a life. I'm going to real quick just talk about what a live experiential exchange can look like. Essentially, can look like many different things. We keep it pretty broad, just recognizing that work is very different, right? We support both visual and performing arts, a hybrid of that, site-specific work. It could look like a public presentation, a performance, an installation, but there has to be an element of exchange, of a public exchange between the artists and the communities in which the work travels. Next slide. So the result with this structure is that every creation fund work is receiving a minimum of $12,000. Again, that varies. If you have more commissioners, that amount will rise. So last year, I should say in the last cycle, projects received between $12,000 and $23,000 per project. And then it also creates a tour. So since there is a minimum of 2 commissioners, it builds in this 2-site tour. Visibility, it creates visibility for the artists, for the work. And as I said, you know, sometimes the creation fund could be an artist's, you know, first time receiving this type of support. And then leveraging power. Really, you know, the power behind this fund is its ability to leverage other opportunities. You know, many times once a project receives a creation fund, we see other co-commissioners jump on the project as well. So hopefully it'll create, you know, a longer life for the work as well. What can co-commissioners look like? Now, I keep referring to co-commissioners as presenting organizations, and partly that is because there is the commitment of the co-commissioner to present the work, but it can really look like a variety of things. And oftentimes we see a variety of types of co-commissioners. Some are presenting organizations, others are community organizations. We've seen universities, we've seen departments of universities, we've seen community centers, and we've also seen other artists and other producing organizations act as co-commissioners, and that is fine. As long as they can fulfill the commitments of contributing the match and presenting the work through a public engagement, then they can participate as co-commissioners. Sometimes creation funds are initiated by the partner through existing relationships. Sometimes they're initiated by the artist. Because it is about building relationships, it does take time. So if you are interested, if you're an artist that's interested in applying, you know, I just ask that you kind of give it time to kind of build these relationships. For artists who, you know, don't have existing relationships with co-commissioners, I would say the first step is really finding out or identifying co-commissioners, and specifically the one NPN partner commissioner. How do you do that? There are many different ways. I always say, you know, really begin with what you know, with who you know. So if you know artists who are already in contact with partners who have a relationship, get them to make an introduction. If you have a presenter in your community, that's a good place to start. Again, if you have any questions about this, you know, we can talk about it later, and I'm always here a phone call away. All right, next slide. So now we're going to go into the eligibility requirements. Again, if you're following along, just go to that section in the guidelines. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about this new eligibility requirement. So as I said at the top of the call, we have been kind of restructuring some of our programs to be in a better alignment with our mission. And so one of the newer eligibility requirements is advancing racial and cultural justice. Now you may ask, what does that mean? You know, we recognize that this can really, you know, advancing racial and cultural justice isn't a one-size-fits-all. It can take many different forms, and these are some examples. So it could look like co-commissioning an artist of color, indigenous artist, a trans artist, supporting a project that deals with issues of racial or cultural justice, supporting a process that builds work with communities or people who have been invested in. We are not trying to define it specifically for you. We want you to let us know And how you do this is through the narrative section on how you think that the project is carrying out some of these goals. Just recognizing, that every person, every community, every work is very different. So these may look like very different things. But again, this is at the heart of the Creation and Development Fund. Other eligibility requirements. Alec, next slide. Okay, projects in the early stage of creation, again, it's about supporting the process. It's not additional money for the presentation of the work. It has to culminate in a live exchange. We talked about that. And artists can be supported from the US, its territories, or Mexico. We used to have an international program. Unfortunately, funds really got tighter and tighter over the year. And we're really trying to take a more kind of global approach to programming. We support local, national artists, and we're opening up the Creation Development Fund to artists based in Mexico. So we're starting there right now. And in the future, this may change, but also recognizing just the issues along the border and how critical they are, and how critical some of that work is, especially at this time in our history. So we have opened up this fund to artists who are based in Mexico as well. Next slide. So as I said, there has to be a minimum of 2 co-commissioners in different communities, and it has to be an NPN partner. The NPN partner is actually going to be the one that kind of leads the application process, although it is done in collaboration with the artist. Now, I do want to make note, if the artist is either a company member, a staff, or resident artist of one of the co-commissioners, sorry, I need a glass of water. It's a lot of talking. If the artist is a company member, resident, or staff member of one of the co-commissioning organizations, then a third co-commissioner must be identified. So just please take that note. Why? Why is because we want to ensure that the work is seen beyond the home base. So if you are an artist that's being co-commissioned by your organization, that's not necessarily a new opportunity to be seen, right? So you will need to identify a third co-commissioner in that case. Again, all of this is in the guidelines. Next slide. Okay, so artists who have received a creation fund in the last 2 years are not eligible for this cycle. Only artists who have not received a creation fund who have not received a creation fund after July 1st, 2016 are eligible. And that is just to spread the love around, right? You want to support a variety of artists. It's not a bad thing that artists come back to the Creation Fund, but we do ask artists to sit out 2 years just to ensure that other artists are being supported. And then lastly, NPN and co-commissioners need to be credited for the life of the work. Again, we, because co-commissioners are putting up their resources, some are smaller organizations, this is really an investment for them, and it's a way to build visibility. So as the work tours or moves around the country, we do ask that you credit NPN and the co-commissioners for as long as the work lives. Next slide. Okay, so co-commissioning fees need to be paid by June 1st, 2020. I just want to make note, in the original guidelines I sent out, there was a typo. So just know that you do have almost a year to pay out co-commissioning fees. Essentially the structure of the Creation Fund is that each co-commissioner submits their matches to NPN. So you're not paying the artist directly, you're paying NPN. And then NPN cuts a check or processes a payment for the full amount, the full commissioning amount, so the minimum of $12,000 directly to the artist. So we want to make sure that artists are paid, right? This money is for the creation process. And so in order to get that going, they need money. And so you need to make sure that this is earmarked in your budget, because the funds will need to be paid out by June 1st, 2020. Next slide.
And also, there's a little chatter on the line. If somebody, if it's loud where you are, if you could mute your phone. Okay.
Okay. So next, we're going to quickly talk about the selection process. So first, I'll just note that the decisions are made by a peer panel. So NPN facilitates the panel, but we do not make the final decisions. Decisions are made by a panel of co-commissioners and artists who have previously received creation support. It is a little noisy, so if
I'm sorry, I will disconnect.
Oh, no, you don't have to
sorry.
disconnect.
I don't know. How do I make it quiet on my end?
Stanlyn, I think you can mute them. Who's that? Who says it's noisy?
It's Vanessa.
Oh, okay, you know what, Vanessa, I can mute you. I just mute.
Okay, done.
And I can unmute you later. So, got it. Okay, so the selection process, again, decisions are made by a peer panel of artists and co-commissioners. I should note that it is kind of a unique process, right? So we are not basing awards on language, grammar, writing. We're not even basing them on, career experience, name recognition, or work samples. Because this is really about the process of creation, it's really hard to pass judgments. So how we make decisions is really looking at how applications are in alignment with program goals and also the quality of the relationships. Next slide, Alec. Okay, so some of the criteria that we is we look at the pool of applicants. We also, again, because of our goals and our mission, we look at artists and co-commissioners who represent communities historically underinvested in. Also projects that advance racial and cultural justice and further those goals that I talked about earlier. Next slide. Projects that honor long-term relationship building and or cultivate new, authentic, reciprocal collaborations. I should note that it's we recognize that the Creation Fund, is a way to go about creating new relationships, but we also want to honor the long-term relationships, especially being a network of partners that have long-lasting relationships. It's not, it's both of these things that we're really trying to achieve. But again, we do, in the narrative, we ask about the relationships, and it's about, a reciprocal collaboration. And then again, projects that are in this creation phase of development as opposed to near touring. Next slide. All right, so I'm not going to go through all of the application, but I'm just going to highlight some new and different things. So as I said at the top of the call, the application is completed through Submittable, and there is a link in the application. There's a link in the email that I sent out, and you can find the link online as well. We have a sample application at the end, at the tail end of the guidelines, so you can look at that to just reference all the information you'll need to collect. but then you actually complete it online. The narrative, so this is new. The project narrative, it can either be written, so it can be text, or you can upload video or audio. So however you feel comfortable. There is the option in Submittable to either complete a text box or to upload audio and video. As I said earlier, we're not judging the narrative based on grammar. We're not, if you do upload video, we're not, critiquing your video. We're looking really for the content. And then we also we do ask for a project budget and timeline. And you can either use the template that we have provided you, which again goes hand in hand with the guidelines, or you can upload your own timeline and budget. Real quick, when you are writing the narrative in the budget, we ask that you really focus it on that creation process. And I was going to say something I forgot. And the budget should capture the expenses, and both the expenses and the income for the creation process. We do look at feasibility, but we do not expect that you have other funds, and that is not a requirement. Sometimes the creation fund is really the only fund that a project has, and that's fine. Others may have, $20,000, $50,000 of other funding, and that's fine as well. Next slide. So demographics, I do want to make note, we do ask for the demographics of the artists and the co-commissioning organizations. Why we do that is, again, we are looking at this work through this lens of racial and cultural equity. We are looking at who's receiving the funds, where are they coming from, the geographies, to try to really fund a mix of folks, a mix of experiences that are really representative of the United States, its territory, and its territories as a whole. So we do ask for demographics. The co-commissioners, I should note that we do ask for the staff board, artist serve, and audience. We recognize that an organization is a collective of all these things. And so that's why we ask this. So just please do note that, because if you are working with other co-commissioners, you will need them to provide some information. So don't wait till the last hour to do that. We do ask for this information on all commissioners. The application has room for up to 5 co-commissioners. If you do have more than 5 co-commissioners, we just ask that you upload a document with the same information that we're asking for in the application. Next slide. Okay, so we are coming to an end, and I'm going to open it up in a second for questions. Again, I just encourage you to look at the guidelines in detail. Also, look at the awards that, if you go on I think it's under What We Do, National Subsidy Programs Awards, and all of the awards from the past few years are up there. I should say, or make note that, we have kind of refined these guidelines over the past few years. So there has been kind of an evolution of the different types of projects that are supported. But it's really a good place to just see the scope of work. And it's really exciting, for us too, to see that, these works have kind of moved on and really toured to many different places and received many different types of support and touched down in many communities. So that is it for me. I'm going to sit here and drink a glass of water because I think I've been talking for 40 minutes. And I'm going to let you all really, I'm going to open it up for questions or comments or ideas. Al, do you mind kind of moderating this part of it?
Yeah. So what we'll go ahead and do here, we have a bunch of folks on the call, just so that we can kind of keep a list of who wants to ask a question. So Stanlyn, if you get a chance, if you could unmute everybody, and then I'll just ask you to say your name if you have an organization, and I'll put you in the queue, and then I'll go down the list and make sure that we get your questions, and then we'll have a chance for follow-up questions after that. So if you want to, whoever has a question, if you want to state your name right now.
This is Flory.
Flory, okay, I got you on the list. Anybody else? Okay, and feel free to, ask.
I'm trying to unmute folks. I know some folks have themselves muted.
Oh, yeah.
I should also note that there's a little chat function in here too. So if for some reason I didn't unmute you and you want to ask a question, you can also bring up the little chat function.
Yeah, it looks like a number of you all are muted right now. So, so Stanlyn, I'll let you unmute the rest of the folks, I think, and maybe let's go ahead and get Flory's question and see what she has to say. Flory?
Hi. Yeah, I actually have a couple of questions. One of them is, where can we find a list of your partners who would be eligible to be co-commissioners?
Okay, so on our website, which is www.npnweb.org, there is a section on, I'm opening up the website to take a look at it real quick. There is a tab that says members and partners. And at this moment, the member and partner types are basically the NPN partners and the VAN partners, VAN partners. Those are the partners who would be eligible to serve as the lead commissioner.
Both of those types?
Yes.
Oh, great, okay. And after other people ask their questions, I do have additional.
Okay. Yeah, so it looks like most everybody is muted right here. So.
Well, I have unmuted them, but I think
maybe they've self-muted.
They've self-muted.
Yeah, so we can't really hear from anybody except for, so if you can unmute yourself. Oh wait, here's a question from Beth and Claire from On the Boards. Okay, so here's the question. If someone is funded through creation and development, can we also use NEA funding of our own towards the creation of their project, or is that considered double funding? So I would say that, what do you think about that, Stanlyn?
Okay, that's a really good question. Actually, NEA has asked us that. But NEA is only a portion of our funding, and it's a small portion of our funding. And we use NEA to support not just the Creation and Development Fund, but the Artist Engagement Fund and the conference. So there's no conflict. So it's fine.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. I've also got a question from Vanessa and on SPA. And also, again, if you want to use the chat function to ask your questions, go ahead. So Vanessa, we're ready for you. I think you might need to unmute yourself, and maybe Stanlyn
I tried to unmute you, Vanessa. Did you? You can unmute yourself and ask.
Oh, she said she should stay muted because it's loud here. Okay, yeah. So you want to go ahead and type it in? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, go right ahead, Vanessa.
Yeah. While Vanessa's typing, does anyone else have a question?
I can put you in the queue.
Okay.
Okay, so we got the question from Vanessa, and we also have one from Lee Momi. So we'll get to that one in a minute. Let's go with Vanessa's question here. Can you speak to how the grant used to be different than it is now? You sort of mentioned that at the end in terms of who you funded.
Oh, Okay, no, that's a good question. So really how it's changed is that we have focused it specifically on projects that advance racial and cultural equity. Now, as I said earlier in the call, that can look like a variety of things. It can look at the artist who is being supported. It can look, it can also look like, the communities or the process that the artist is using. Advancing racial and cultural equity can really look like many different things. In the past, a lot of projects kind of were already doing that, but it wasn't as explicit. And so now we really are pretty explicit about that. Does that make sense, Vanessa? Does that answer your question?
She says it's great.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Next.
Okay, so the next question is from Limomi. That's what it says on here, at least. Regarding staff demographics, do you identify institutional staff or programming staff related to the creation process?
That's a really good question. You know what? And now that you brought it up, we should specify. We are. I think in this case, we are looking at organizational staff. However, there is, I think, a section for comments. So if you do want to make note about that, we're looking organizationally, really at the entire institution. But we recognize that many organizations, especially larger organizations, are made up of many different departments who might look very different. And so I would say, capture the organizational demographics, but if you do want to add something specific about your department, do that in the notes. Okay,
I don't have any other questions lined up, but here's one from Flory. Okay. Flory would like additional information regarding different communities. We're located in Los Angeles County, larger both in area and population than many states. How far afield do we need to go? Are we also looking at other societal communities, for example, ethnicity and religion, etc.?
Okay, that's great. Yeah, and community, that word can mean very different things, right? In the terms of this, we are looking at geography. So really the communities need to be 100 miles apart. Now, yes, I recognize, in LA, it's made up of many different communities, probably within 100 miles, but one of the goals of the Creation Development Fund is that mobility aspect of it, right? So it's moving the work around to be seen. So Flora, you can certainly have, if you wanted to, you could have 3 organizations in LA co-commission. We would just ask that you had an additional one at least 100 miles away. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah. And especially if you wanted to look at how long it takes to get across LA, could be easily the equivalent of 100 miles.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for that, Flory. Any other questions? Again, looks like everybody's muted, but if you want to type into the chat function or even just email us or call us after this call, we're more than willing to take those questions then as well.
Any other questions? Ideas? Okay, well, if there are no more questions, please feel free, as Alex said, you can contact us at any time. My contact information is in the guidelines. So my email is Stanlyn at NPN, STANLYN at npnweb.org. And my phone number is 504-595-8008, extension 704. As you're digging into these or completing them, you can give me a ring. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Or if you do have ideas that you want to pass by me that you think might be, are feasible, and you just wanted to chat, I'm open to that as well. So again, deadline May 20th. You have a little bit of time. Just good luck with everything, and please feel free to contact us. All right.
Thank you, Stanlyn.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Okay.